I'm a believer that every human being you meet has a streak of genius in them. And part of our journey on this planet is to uncover like that streak of genius and apply it in a way that not just helps and serves us, but serves and helps everyone around us and makes the world a better place. And so when I meet people, I like to look for what is that streak of genius? And is that something what is that and how is that underdeveloped? They were created and called to be unique and do amazing things.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Journey to Multifamily Millions. I'm your host, founder, and CEO of Zana Investments, Tim Little. And on today's show, we have with us Mike Hardy. Mike is the managing partner of California business for Churchill Mortgage, leading a top 1% nationwide team and overseeing 30 employees managing $500 million. He is also the founder and principal of CYRUS Opportunity Zone Fund, where he helps investors harness the power of tax-free investing through opportunity zones. Mike, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Tim. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, and it is great to have you. So I gave everyone a high-level overview of your background, but on this show, we really like to get into the details of how you got started on your journey. So please take us back to the beginning and tell us how you got to where you are today.
Sure, absolutely. It's an interesting story. First, I would say, as my journey goes, I'm a husband and a father first, and been married 25 years, and I have 4 kids that range from 14 to 21. So there's no lack of excitement in our house at any given time. Now, that said, on the business front, I was actually a pre-med undergraduate college and realized I'd finished my junior year and realized I had zero desire to go to medical school. And I've always loved the world of business. So I didn't sit for MCATs. I finished my degree and ended up getting a business minor and worked as a financial advisor for the early years of my career for about 5, 6 years after getting out of school. And so along that path, interesting, I had a buddy of mine that was in the mortgage banking business. We were young guys. We were planning to take over the world together. We'd have these lunches where we just think really big and talk about our marketing approach and how we can grow our respective businesses. And all of a sudden, one day, I just got curious about the world of mortgage and the world of real estate. And it was interesting to me. No, it's not really a topic that's ever covered going through school or in the university system. You don't see at the job fairs, you don't see mortgage companies very often. It's just this odd industry. Long story short, I came to quickly realize that there was a blue ocean strategy in the mortgage business to help people manage debt effectively. And I made the transition, put my Series 7 on the shelf and moved into the mortgage space for a while, knowing I had a 2-year window and just didn't look back. That was right in 2002, caught the front of the wave of a tremendous amount of refinance business back in that era. And I just love a combination of real estate, numbers, and people. And that was the mortgage banking business. So that opened me to the world of real estate and real estate investing, but that was a transition in. It was my distaste and disdain for the pre-med and the medical profession. And here we are in real estate 20 years later and loving everything about it.
Awesome. So tell us a little bit more about what exactly were you doing? Was it mostly the refinancing? And I get that was obviously probably a bulk of your business during the surge, I'll call it, the lead up. What has that looked like since? And did you find yourself in I don't want to say a bad place, but a different place once that exuberance backed off post 2008, 2009?
Right. So when I entered into the banking business, I took a different approach. I took the approach as a debt manager, and I never really took off my financial advisor hat. So I ended up getting a lot of business because my message and my story was different. It was, how do we effectively manage debt over time and grow wealth in real estate? And so I would look at somebody, instead of managing a portfolio of assets, how do we effectively manage your debt? And just nobody was talking about that type of thinking back in that era. So I ended up with a lot of clients that were referred in from other financial advisors because I could speak that language as well. Just saying, this guy's different. He'll help you manage debt. He'll tell you if you shouldn't refinance. And I did very little of the subprime business. I think I can count on one hand the number of subprime loans that I actually did that I didn't feel good about. There's certain circumstances where it makes a lot of sense, but it's really rare. And where the majority of the industry was just the opposite. So when we moved from '06 and '07 into '08, of course, the market just was decimated. But next thing, I saved my money. I didn't get lavish with spending. And I remember just grinding for about a year and a half, took very little income, but I had had great staff, had great operations, kept the doors open. And at one point I looked around and no one else was left in business. And then when I remember one day the Fed cut the federal funds and discount rate 50 basis points, the market reacted very favorably in terms of bond market and yields dropping. And then I had a flood of business. And so it's just been, there's such ups and downs in the mortgage business, but that was how I navigated through the Great Recession, was by staying true to what I believed, saving my money, and then also treating people with respect and building up a local network of referral partners. And that kept me afloat.
Yeah. And I think there's some really important lessons that people can pull from that for a whole variety of circumstances. I think specifically for the multifamily market right now, certainly not nearly on the same level as what happened in 2008, but things are cooling down. Cap rates aren't compressing as quickly as they were. And there was a lot of people who look like geniuses in the multifamily investing arena for the past, I'd say 2 to 3 years at minimum, just because things were so hot and things were appreciating so quickly. We were taking deals full cycle in 18 months that were supposed to be 5-year holds. It was almost absurd. And of course, that it couldn't last, not to that extent. And so I think you're gonna see a lot of exactly what you were talking about. Those people who are keeping some dry powder and who are staying true to what their fundamentals are and being very conservative in their underwriting now, they'll be the ones who are still sitting around, while others who did some deals that maybe weren't so good are going to fall to the wayside. You're going to find those people left still standing.
Yeah, I percent agree. My dad taught me something when I was young, and he said, markets can stay irrational longer than most people can stay solvent. So make sure you plan for times of irrationality. And I'm sure that was Ronald Reagan or somebody that said it, but I learned that lesson, and I learned it the hard way through '08 because I had some reserves, but it made me appreciate the size and magnitudes of storms that can come in and be positioned very well for this current market that we're in, especially on the mortgage banking side. Just to know that, as Warren Buffett, when the tide goes out, everyone can see who's swimming naked, that saying. But that type of thinking. So I agree. I think there's a big difference between having the wind at your back and being a good investor. And I think that's something that at all times I'm very cognizant of. Is we absolutely need to be aware of the trends and the demographics and the winds, but are we positioning and planning so that if there's a cycle that comes, and especially a sharp one like we're in currently, do we have a plan given a cycle to be able to make it from point A to point B? So I think that's a big difference. I look at saving, investing, speculating, and gambling are all very different mindsets and attitudes. And I think sometimes people think they're investing when they're really speculating or gambling.
Yeah. And I think to that point, those people who are speculating and gambling, they're the ones who are investing in that asset class. In this case, we're talking multifamily because it seemed easy, right? It seemed like everybody was making money. But as soon as it becomes hard and it becomes much more difficult to find deals that pencil out and do well, then they're probably just going to say, you know what, this isn't worth the effort. And they're going to move on to whatever the next asset class is. And that's going to be another thing that kind of culls the field, I think.
Yeah, I agree. And in a lot of these situations, the money's really made when you buy, and then you have to work through the project. I don't know. I'm very careful about that. We do a fair amount of fix and flip projects as well, and there's a formula, and even in a declining market, where you can be unemotionally attached to the outcome and say, "This is my price. It either works or it doesn't." And if it doesn't, that's and it's just, I think being unemotionally attached to the outcome and entering into the situation with some level of cushion and adequate reserves, that positions to be able to make sure that we're moving in the right direction at all times.
Yeah, totally agree. So talk to me a little bit about the CYRUS Opportunity Zone Fund. I guess we should start off with what an opportunity zone is, because I know some people may have been exposed to it, but may not necessarily understand it.
Yeah, so this is, and I really stumbled across this somewhat by through serendipity. And I'll just give you the short backstory to this, but this was created out of the 2017 Tax Act. And for a window of time, I was the chair of the financial advisor group for Azusa Pacific University, and one of our goals was to provide public facing education to CPAs and attorneys and CFPs and real estate professionals on creative real estate tax planning and wealth building. And so we had the usual gamut of different speakers, and we had a 1031 expert and a 721 provision, and gentlemen talking through charitable remainder trusts and charitable lead trusts and DSTs. And there's this new kid on the block, the Opportunity Zone. And I couldn't find an expert. We couldn't find a speaker that really had a grip on this. And so I said, all right, guys, I will take this spot as an investor. We'll do a caveat. I'll take a smaller section. I'm not an expert, but I'm an interested investor. You all need to know about this. So I spent 3 weeks just going through the tax law, and really my mind was blown. It seemed too good to be true, but I had to get up. I had to do this presentation, and it got me thinking after I did this talk, why are more people not doing this? Like, the tax benefits are once in a century that exist through the Opportunity Zone. And come to find out later, all of the ultra elite are doing this, family offices. They all do this, but it just never makes its way down to Main Street because majority of CPAs and tax professionals are backward looking, not forward looking. In the financial advisor world, it's outside of the broker dealer regulatory body. And so it's just a little sliver. So that was my aha moment and I've got some fund management experience in my past, and have a good friend of mine that's a very seasoned fund manager, and said, listen, this is a once in a century tax play right here. I'm doing a lot of real estate investing, fix and flips. I'm seeing my own pain by having to pay capital gains if I don't have a good 1031 outlet. And so I created this as much to solve my own pain, and a lot of other Main Street and just above Main Street type investors that may have a busted 1031 exchange and don't have family office type money. So that's how this started. And that's the backstory to it. And I can walk through some of the highlights, but I thought I'd share the story first because it was really by accident that I stumbled across it.
Yeah. And the thing that I think is interesting is I feel like there was a decent amount of hype surrounding opportunity zones when they first started talking about it and when it first came out. And so you started looking into it a bit too. And then it seemed to just fade away. But I guess it didn't fade away. It just went to those audiences, like you said, who were poised to be advised to do it, which is the high net worth individuals, family offices, etc. And you're right. It seems like it hasn't trickled down because even within the real estate circles, it isn't talked about that much.
Yeah, and it is. And I think part of it is because it's a very complex animal and there's a shelf life to it. And so this is one of those things where you either have to be all in or not at all. It's not something you can do. Let's see if a 1031 can work out as an individual. And then as I was looking around to different opportunities, it seemed like there was a number of different funds that were doing this, but it was more of a tax play than a solid investment strategy, or just was in my mind, it has to be both. Neither Each of those have to be handled and managed appropriately. And after doing the research and thinking through it and looking at how am I going to build my own wealth and some market studying of other folks that had similar pain and problem, realized that, yep, I need to launch this. And that's how this got started. And I can give you the highlights of the OZ. The short version is that 20% of each state is back through the 2017 Tax Act was allowed to be designated as opportunity zone areas. And that's really areas that are the lower income areas that need development. And the incentive is for investors that have capital gains. If they move capital gains into an opportunity zone fund, what's known as a QOF, Qualified Opportunity Fund, then there's some very significant tax benefits for those investors. And so you do two things at once, and I'll talk about the tax benefits in a minute, but you attract funding into areas that need it. So you bring everything up in that area, tax base, revitalize an area, and then the investors themselves, two key benefits. Number one is any contribution into a QOF, you get to defer paying the capital gains tax until April of 2027. So there's a delay in 4 years of compounding growth that can take place. But the best benefit by far, hands down, that I've ever seen is all of the growth that takes place inside of a qualified opportunity fund of whatever the initial contribution was, will be able to grow and exit that fund tax free, very much with the same treatment, just like a Roth IRA. And so you can have compound as long as it's in the fund for 10 years. So there's a couple
Right.
things to navigate, but you've got April of 2027 as a hard date where taxes due, and then any contribution 10 years exit tax free is that's the best thing I've ever seen in terms of tax benefits for investors.
Yeah. And I'm wondering if that's really the biggest hangup is the 10-year requirement. It's not that long in investing terms, but I'm just wondering like why more people wouldn't do it other than not knowing about it. Do you find that that 10-year requirement is a sticking?
With a little education, it's easy to overcome, and I'll explain why. It is on the surface. It absolutely is because people think 10 years, I don't want to do that. But what's unique about the opportunity zone strategy is that an investor has the ability to separate their basis from their gains. And so let's just say it's a $2 million investment and you have $1 million of gains and you have $1 million of basis. You take your $1 million and you put it back in your pocket and you put it to work again. And then you take the gain portion and put it into the fund, and then you allow that growth to take place. Now, that said, the way we set this up to be as investor friendly as possible without compromising the integrity of the fund. So if an investor needs to get funds out for whatever reason, every January there's an off ramp. So you can pull your funds out almost like a 1-year CD, right? Or you can pull your funds out annually. We don't recommend that because you lose the but what we wanted to do was exactly to your point is to help get around that 10-year hangup with a 1-year liquidity option for each investor. And so that now gives people the peace of mind. Okay, if I need to get to my money, it's a year out and I can take it. I get it. I have to pay tax on it. I don't get the benefit of the OZ in its entirety because of that. But now they know that they've got access to it if needed, plus the benefit of that 10-year road.
Yeah. So really, you're just providing them that peace of mind, but saying, yeah, I advise you not to touch it because that's something that even within, say, like a multifamily syndication, we wouldn't normally do. We say, hey, it's going to be locked up for 5 years, 7 years, whatever the case may be. Now, is there a way to get their money back? Sure, but it's very legal and onerous, and nobody wants to have to deal with that. So it sounds like you're using it primarily to give them that peace of mind, hoping for their sake that they never have to use
And it's rare. And the beauty of it is that, again, the gains being separated from the basis, it just gives a lot of flexibility. And our model is pretty simple. The way I think personally is I want to follow the rule of 72 over 10 years, 7.2% rate of return, money will double and exit tax free. Rule 11.6%, just under 12% rate of return, money will triple and exit tax free. And if you run at 15%, it will quadruple and exit tax free. And we've been running just about 10.5% since the inception of the fund. And that's even through this past year. So we've just, again, we buy pretty deep and have a system that's worked really well for us. So my personal goal is I want my contributions of capital gains over 10 years to triple and exit tax free. And if I can do that's a home run on every level with the option, if I need to, have a liquidity event for whatever reason to be able to take some off the table each year. One thing we did that's interesting, and I don't know if other funds are doing this, but one of the challenges that investors had is probably your next question is, what about the tax that's due April of 2027? Because some folks, again, they've got their basis, but you still have that tax event due. So let's just say out of that $1 million, it's 200,000. So we've created the opportunity for a margin wash loan option for each investor if they want to pay the tax through the fund as opposed to money. So I just set this up for myself. What were all the things that I would want as an investor? This was designed to be investor friendly all the way through and through, again, without compromising things that can't be compromised. And so those are the things that we've set up to give investors the peace of mind and then the flexibility and latitude that they may want or need.
Okay. And so just to clarify that for me, if not for the listeners, what you're saying is if they owed 200,000 in taxes at 2027, you create a loan product for them so that they don't have to come out of pocket for that, what is owed.
It's
Essentially?
exactly right.
Okay.
So they've got an option to move their invested funds into a fixed account and then have a interest rate that's charged that's equal to that fixed account to be able to offset. So it pulls it off the table from an investment standpoint. It's a net zero now for the remainder of the years invested, and it gives them that $200,000 in this case to be able to pay the tax if they don't have the outside liquidity. Now, that said, it's likely not in their best interest because you want your money compounding and exiting tax free. You're taking it off the
Mhm.
table. So if you have outside funds that are more liquid or not performing as well, use that by all means. But again, this was set up. What is the most we can do to be investor friendly? And that was one of the things as I was going through this brainstorming process was I have outside money, but what if I need some of this to pay the tax? How does that work? Let's set up a wash loan option. And so that's what we did.
Interesting. Yeah, and hopefully they would be at a point from a tax strategy perspective that they wouldn't find themselves in that situation because they have write-offs such that it would offset that. But that's gets into a deeper hole.
But markets can stay irrational sometimes longer than we're planning for. So it's like, all right, let's put that in place. But yeah, that was one of those. There's a lot of, this is years ago now, just thinking through all this, but there's a lot of nights I spent staring up at the ceiling, just thinking through, okay, what if, and here we are.
Yeah, and so I guess from the on the ground perspective, I know there's certain requirements that go into opportunity zone investments. And correct me if I'm wrong, because it's been a while since I looked into it, but I think one of them was you have to put the total amount into it that like you're paying for the property. So for example, if it cost $1 million, then you have to put 1 million into it in improvements in order for it to qualify. Am I close on that?
Yep, you're correct. Backing out the land value, you have to have 100%. Whatever the existing structural value is, you need to have 100% of that into the project. And so that's one of the caveats. And then there's some certain parameters of we have a little bit of latitude investing outside of the OZ. The majority has to be in the OZ. So there's some guidelines that we need to follow to be able to stay compliant, but spot on 100% improvement over existing structural value after the land value has been backed up.
Do you think that's something that prevents a lot of folks from doing the actual investment on the ground too? Because maybe it doesn't make sense from a pure numbers perspective to get back the returns that they want based on putting that much into it.
No, absolutely it is. Again, it's just complex enough to scare a lot of people away. And that's one of those issues. And as I was looking at this, it's okay, we got some things to figure out. Is there a market and a model where this can work? And some of the things don't make sense to me the way that the regulations are put in place. But again, we work with the rules that are rules of the game that we're provided with. But that was one of them. And we realized, no, we can do it. We can make it work. And we do. And again, that's just part of our filter and our search parameters now for various projects is one of the competitive advantages that we have is I've been in just being in the mortgage banking space for so long. I have a lot of long-standing local realtor intel. And so we get a lot of things that are off-market looks that many people don't get because of 10, 15 plus years of relationships, plus being cash buyers and having a good reputation. A lot of the folks that we work with, they know the parameters up front. And so they'll bring to us, here's another one. I already checked. It's in the OZ. Here's what it looks like. We've got a model that they fill out. And so long story short, the goal is set up to be able to just have a lot of at bats and be able to choose the projects that we like.
All right. And we don't have to go into the weeds too much, but can you talk a little bit about some of those parameters and what you guys are looking for to make that deal work for you?
Yeah, sure. And we've got, I'll just give two different things that are part of our model. One of them is we are building out 100 different build to rent projects and we're buying some dirt really cheap and we're able to build efficiently. And so that's, if you're starting with dirt, we've already made a big check mark with one of the OZ requirements. And then we've got some fix and flip projects that are really heavy rehab projects that we do in the OZ. One of them was we didn't buy this, but it was just recent one. So using it as an example, it came off the market before we could make it happen. But it was a property that was burned down. And we're like, this is perfect. And we were going to buy it we have a lot of flip projects we'll buy for a very significant discount. So there's some good upside with returns just because we can buy so deep. So yeah, we just run it through the model and see what works and have a handful of acquisition managers that we know and trust and boots on the ground. And we keep it simple, but that's our model.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, a lot of this to the people who are investing in your fund, they probably just see the project itself and are they able to choose by project or is it like a blind fund where they just put money in and it goes to whatever it goes to?
Yeah, and no, it's not a choose a project option. It's a blind fund, and they trust our level of experience in management to be able to get good returns, and our track record's strong. Yeah, that's the model. Pretty simple. And our again, the goal for each investor, my goal for myself and all the other investors is can I at minimum double the money and have it exit tax free? And our target really is to triple the money over 10 years and have it exit tax free. I'm a simple guy. So I always want to like just can I boil it down to its most basic elements and what do most people want? I would love to triple my money tax free. I would like to have the option, if needed, to be able to pull some funds out if needed each year. I would like to have the option for a loan to pay the tax if I don't have liquidity outside of it. And that's it. I keep it simple.
No, I'm absolutely the same way. And that's why, like, even in multifamily, when you're looking at value add deals, like you could come up with all number of metrics to go by on whether it's a good deal or not and what types of returns, this and that. And when I started out passively investing, I was just like, okay, equity multiple. So I'll double my money in 5 years. Okay, I get it. Like I don't need to go into cash on cash or all this stuff. And for some people, that's important based on their investing goals. But again, I'm like, I get it. Okay, I'll have twice as much at the end of this time. Got it.
I want to be able to explain it to my 14-year-old in about 30 seconds. And if I can do that, I know that I've got a very path and plan. And so that's my model. Can I explain it to a freshman? And yet, can you go, yeah, that makes sense, Dad. I'd like to invest too. I do. My kids are silent investors for me on some fix and flip projects. So we talk about this stuff all the time.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I hope to do the same. My daughters are 4 and 7. I got to get them started slowly, but they'll get there. So hopefully this sheds some light on the whole opportunity zone opportunity, for lack of a better word. Because again, I think it doesn't get as much exposure as it probably should. And it's not going to be right for everyone, but for some people, it's going to make a lot of sense. But I do want to switch gears a little bit. I know you do some coaching, some mindset, stuff like that. And I saw that you have 5 keys to building a network that explodes your net worth. This is something that I've struggled with. And I think it's something that a lot of people struggle with that raised wealthy or didn't work within affluent circles. Can you dive into those 5 keys for us?
Sure. And I'll share this. I was actually born or grew up poor. I grew up, lived in a trailer. Me and my two sisters were on the far end, my folks on the other side. And my dad was going through school. He was getting his PhD. And so later in life, he did really well. But my early growing up years, I remember having very little. And that was just something that shaped me in a way where I looked at the world and I watched how hard work and innovation and networking accelerate growth. And yeah, one of the things that has been a practice of mine is I'm a believer that every human being you meet has a streak of genius in them. And part of our journey on this planet is to uncover like that streak of genius and apply it in a way that not just helps and serves us, but serves and helps everyone around us and makes the world a better place. And so when I meet people, I like to look for what is that streak of genius? And is that something that is, what is that? And how is that underdeveloped? And I think a lot of times, like our school system makes clones of so many people when really we're created and called to be unique and do amazing things. But we all get boxed in. What's the saying? This is like a Les Brown saying, which is born unique, but most people die as clones. It's like people, for whatever reason, they gravitate toward the mean and they lose like that spark. And so I think that being aware of the genius that exists in each individual and across the planet and being able to help people refine and uncover that is pretty special. And so that's one thing I look for. And everyone I meet is like, what's unique about them? What's their super? That's one. I'll tell another tactical thing that I like to do that might be good for some of the listeners is if I ever go to a networking event, I do the opposite of what most people do. Most people collect 50 cards from 50 people and never talk to anybody again. So I play this little game, which is at this event, if I could only continue a relationship with one person, who would that be and why? If I can only bring one card home. And so that's what I do. And I'll look and say, all right, who is the person of, I call them when I'm doing business, I call them the 3 Cs, but it's people of character, people that are highly competent, and people that are care about not just themselves, but about others. And then if I'm hiring, there's 2 more. Are they coachable and do they have courage? So if I'm hiring or firing, it's character, competent, caring, coachable, and courage. And then if I'm doing business, it's those first 3. So I'll look to see who's got some spark, something unique, maybe an X factor that has those 3 Cs. And then reach out to them afterwards and say, hey, let's grab coffee or lunch, get to know each other a little bit. So that's a simple way to be able to, in my mind, attract and find like-minded people. And oftentimes, like, and this is the other part that and another one of those 5 keys is I don't always know if I'm supposed to help someone, if they're supposed to help me, or we're supposed to help each other. And any one of those is okay. And I have to be open and willing to, hey, maybe I'm going to meet somebody. And it's just today, I need to help Tim for whatever reason. I can help Tim move from here to here. And if that's what this is supposed to be, then fantastic. And maybe Tim is just supposed to help me, and maybe it's both ways, but I'm at peace with wherever it goes. And so that's another one of those keys. So I thought I'd share that as
No, that's great stuff. I think that tactical tip is exactly that. It lets you be much more efficient in your efforts. And it's not always easy to know going in who that one person is, but you probably get a little vibe from just the little conversations taking place. And yeah, you get some signals there. And that's when you hone in. And I don't want to say target someone, but I'm military, so I can't help it. But go after that person so that you can develop that relationship, even if it's after the fact. If you get those 5 business cards, maybe you remember the conversation you had with, and that's the person that you go full force and trying to develop that relationship with. I think that makes a lot of sense rather than sending out 25 emails the night after an event.
and more is not better. I'm a less is more guy. And I've learned that the hard way over the years. I think the difference of scarcity thinking versus abundance and prosperity thinking is scarcity thinking is I don't want to let anything get away. And abundance thinking is who is the individual and what are the 80-20 opportunities? And even like an 80-20 of an 80-20 of an 80-20, like what's that 0.8, call it 1% that can have, follow the math out, 50% of the impact with 1% of the work or the relationship or the connection. And one more saying that I read this weekly, maybe even almost daily, and it's one new idea or one new relationship can completely change the trajectory of your life. One new idea or one new relationship. And so that thinking is who, and again, in life, there's so much genius out there. And so in thinking less is more and thinking, how can I align with people that are like-minded, that are healthy, that are big thinkers, that could be like iron sharpens iron type individuals. And then my life trajectory can change simply because of one interaction or one idea I get from somebody of substance and of quality and character. So that's also part of that same genre that I thought I'd share as well. These are the things that, like, if I can, this is stuff that I wish they taught in school and that I want my kids to learn, because these are the things that can just help them think bigger and different and full of life and full of opportunity, as opposed to just getting stuck in the, oh, how do I do this and how do I earn a living? But realize what a gift life is and all the opportunities that exist.
Yeah, I'm recognizing more and more that responsibility to teach those lessons is on us as parents, whether that's for better or worse. What is unfortunate is that so many parents like mine and others hadn't already learned those lessons for success, and they didn't have it in them to pass down to their children. It's no one's fault. It's just, so we have to learn it along the way. And that's okay as long as we, I think, dedicate ourselves to passing it along to others. That's the responsibility we have once we've learned those lessons.
Yep, 100%. And regardless, and no matter how complicated the world is, I still think that in this country, there is more opportunity for any individual that is intentional and works hard and makes it a point to bring value and improve themselves and improve others to build a substantial and impactful and deeply meaningful life. And I think what I remember hearing this saying years ago was we create for our kids what we model in our life, right? So my kids will end up seeing an example of what things can and should look like. And my dad did a lot of this for me, right? I watched him go to being extremely successful from just based on his education and hard work. I think that the example we set is the most powerful lesson we can give. And it doesn't mean we don't need to have those hard and maybe sometimes like shaping conversations. We absolutely do. But I think our biggest lesson is our.
Yeah, 100%. And this has been some awesome conversation, but we do have to move on to the turbo round.
Let's do it.
Yeah, I'm going to ask you 3 questions that I ask every guest I have on the show. Just ask you for an honest, quick answer. The first one, what is one red flag every investor should look out for?
Human beings are driven by greed and fear. And I think when either of those emotions surface, we need to put ourselves in check. And so hope is not a plan And anytime there's hope because the greed factor starts bleeding in, that's a cause for caution. So I'm a tried and true. Do I understand it? Can I explain it to my freshmen? And are some unhealthy emotions clouding my decision? And so those are the things that I look for as an investor.
All right. The second question, what is a myth about this business that you would like to set straight?
The myth is that it's too complicated. I don't look at it that way. I look at it very much like somebody that's never worked out and there's a conversation about they have to run a marathon. And I've run an Ironman, so I've done many marathons in the past. And I remember as I was looking up to it, it's just you have to take it bite-sized. It's like if you're gonna grow in an area, then there's a daily discipline needed. And so I have a 1% rule. If I want to grow in an area, I'm going to spend 1% of my day learning about it and moving in that direction. 1% of my day is 15 minutes. And so to answer that question, this business has amazing opportunity. More millionaires are made through this world of real estate than anywhere else. So take 1% of the day, 15 minutes, and just start to learn and move in a direction, and you realize very quickly that you can do it.
Yeah, and I think part of that too is the whole who, not how, right? Like someone doesn't necessarily need to be an expert on everything as long as they can find that person who is. I certainly recommend, especially if we're talking about investing, you have at least a base level knowledge and comprehension of what you're getting into, because you shouldn't invest in anything you don't understand. But if you're relying on experts who you've vetted, and I think a good measure is, can they teach you or can they help you understand it? Then I think that's really.
Yeah, Who Not How is one of my favorite books. I'm reading it for a third time right now, so it's really interesting that you just brought this up because we didn't talk about this. But that's been this big aha moment for me over the last few years, is that you can accelerate your growth with the right who's in your life. And I was not trained to think that. I was trained to think that I need to figure everything out on my own. And that goes to that one new relationship can just change the trajectory. So I'm a big fan of Who Not How. Thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, absolutely. And interestingly enough, I think we learn a little bit of that in the military as officers, because in charge of these experts, right? They're experts in their field. I cannot be as good at the respective jobs of each of my soldiers because they have different specialties, but I need to understand each one of them well enough to know how to integrate and maximize their efforts. Know enough to be dangerous, but I shouldn't be expected to be as good at it as they are, because that's what they get paid for.
Yeah,
right. All right, so last question. What does success look like to you?
So there's a saying I really like, which I give credit to a friend of mine for this, but it's freedom of time and place. The ability to go where I want, when I want, and with who I want. Or it can even be looked at to not have to do anything I don't want with anyone I don't want to do it with. And so that's a part of it. That's a part of it. That creates the space. The second part to success would be I have 4 different categories of life that I intentionally grow in every day, and it's called the core 4. But it's body, being, balance, and business. And my goal is to be in the top 1% in each of those areas. And that to me is a milestone of success. And so body is physically, obviously, health and nutritional areas. Being is clarity, mentally, spiritually, emotionally. Balance is relationship with my wife and my kids. And then business is, of course, whatever the metrics of your respective business are. We can look at different wealth metrics. So it's like, all right, what is top 1%? And I know it can get murky for some of the philosophical areas, but that said, it's a target. All right, so can I do what I want, when I want, with who I want, or not have to do the things that I don't, and then also be in the top 1%? Is it possible? And then I go to zero-based thinking, which is, if life depended on it, how would I do it? So I know it's a long answer, but it's an involved answer, but those are the things as I think about success and what that means, they all tie together in a way that leaves my family, my community, and then subsequently the people that are in my life, leaving the world a better place. So that's what success means to me.
No, I like that. It's very holistic, right? You're looking at different aspects of it, whereas some people only look at it by one measure. You're looking at it very holistic. All right. Hey, Mike, this has been an awesome conversation. I think you brought a ton of value just in terms of breaking down those opportunity zones, which remain a mystery for most people, and then hitting some of that mindset stuff, which I think was super valuable as well. Please tell everyone how they can get in contact with you and if you have anything else that you'd like to share with them.
Sure. No, it's been an amazing conversation, Tim. I certainly appreciate it and getting to know you. And yeah, the opportunity zone, it will sunset. It goes away 2026. So there's a window of time for this to be able to work and for busted 1031 exchange or for investors that want to be more strategic with capital gains. Best way to get a hold of me is actually my website, mikehardybio.com, whether it's on the mortgage banking front or on the investing side, mikehardybio.com. But best email would be Mike at CYRUS, CYRUSOZ fund.com for a direct email. And happy to answer any questions or be of service in any way. And it's been a true pleasure.
Yeah, and we'll definitely have all that information in the show notes. Mike, again, appreciate you coming on and look forward to continuing to see you do big things on your journey to multifamily millions.
Tim, thank you so much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.